Hey guys, it's Steve the Canadian Photo Guy here. It's been quite a while since I've made a post here, but I've had a lot of questions over the last while about how I do some of my astrophotography and some of the processing that's involved. So today I figured we would start off with a very basic editing process using a single image and processing it through from the original RAW through to the finished product using Pixinsight. For those of you that don't know, Pixinsight is a dedicated astrophotography editing program. Absolutely awesome for doing editing. You can do a lot of stuff in Photoshop, but I find I can do more easier using Pixinsight. So why don't we get into it and have a look. Alright, so here we go, guys. This image is taken with a simple Canon T3i. It's a cheap, basic entry-level camera, which I actually had a friend modify for me, removing one of the filters in front of the sensor. This gives me a lot richer color in the reds. It's something when you get into astrophotography, you realize that the stock cameras don't pick up some of those really subtle red colors and the faint, deep reds that are in outer space. So modifying the camera will help to work with that. So this is the file. We're going to open that up. Just drag it into Pixinsight here. All right. So there we go. Not a fantastic image, but this is what you get as a RAW file. Now, within Pixinsight, we have a couple of adjustments. There's one right up on top here called the Screen Transformation Auto Stretch. Basically, what this does essentially is adjusting levels, but to the extreme. So what I'll do is I'll just click on that and we will see a lot more data coming out of that image. And as you can see, there's a lot of the faint details that were on the outer edge of the nebula here. It started to stand out. And I'm just going to rotate this image as well under geometry and just do a fast rotation, and we're gonna go 90 degrees counterclockwise. There we go, and that's better. It seems like it's backwards if I look at it the other way. So here we go, guys. Basic image. Now, looking over at the processes, these are the processes. I'll go to all processes. These are all the different processes that you have to work with in Pixinsight. There's a lot of them. And coming from Photoshop, I thought I had a pretty good handle on editing images. I'll tell you, Pixinsight is another animal. It's very different than Photoshop. However, there is hope. I spent a lot of time looking on YouTube, watching different guys doing some different work with Pixinsight, and have kind of pieced together my own settings and my own little workflow that has worked for me and allows me to get through these images relatively quickly. So what I'll do, I've actually created a series of icons. I'm just going to load my process icons here, which are right here, and basically down the side, these are the processes that I will be going through. So as I go through it, here's a screen transformation function. And as you can see, I can turn this off and bring that back to the way it was when we shot it. But for right now, we'll hit that just so we can see what the image looks like. Of course, this is not the finished image. This is simply showing us the data that's there. We're going to do a lot of work on this. The next step that I would follow would be the dynamic crop. And actually, I'm going to go into my processes here, geometry and dynamic crop right here. And doing this, we can just draw out the area that we would like to crop. And in this case, I'm going to kind of get rid of the dark area that's along the edge of the image here. And interestingly enough, that dark image or dark edge along the edge of the image is actually a shadow of the mirror that is in the DSLR. And I have modified this camera to be strictly an astrophotography camera. I actually took a hot knife and cut out the mirror, so it no longer has a mirror. It really only works for doing astrophotography. But in doing that, I now have clean images. So we'll just apply that and close that down. All right, so next we have the dynamic background extraction. In this case, we have a bunch of different settings here, and there's a sample generation. This will basically generate samples across the image, as you can see on this area here, and it will avoid areas like the nebula here. And I do this twice actually. Once, what we do is a division for the correction, and I'm going to run that now. And these processes take a minute or two to run through, and it will generate another image. I'm going to close this down, and once again we'll auto stretch this image, and you can now see a drastic difference already from that original image that we had to this image with just doing that dynamic background extraction. It took a lot of that ugly green color that we had. I'm going to keep this here just as a reference. I'm just going to throw that off to the side. We'll have that as a reference as we go through. We can go back and have a look at it when we're all done. I'll do the dynamic background extraction again. Again, we'll just generate image or the points on it. This time we're doing the correction is subtraction, and we're going to run through that. And we'll close this down. Now this won't give as drastic a difference, but there we go. Like I say, it's not as drastic a change as it was to begin with. In fact, you may not even see much of a change at all. There's some subtle differences up in here. We're going to close this one down as we don't need it anymore. Next, we are going to deal with some of the noise. We have the multiscale linear transform. Again, these are some of the settings that I have picked up going through some of the tutorials online. And I should say, by no means am I an expert when it comes to Pixinsight. Not at all. I'm very much a newbie when it comes to this. But I have learned a few tricks, I guess you would call them. And they really seem to work for me, and I'm getting good results with the images that I have. So again, we'll run these settings on it and hit this to apply the settings. And again, the processes take a while sometimes with Pixinsight. We'll come back and do the multiscale linear transform again. This one is on the chrominance. So this is getting some of the color noise out of the image. And again, we'll apply that. All right. So we'll shut that down. Now we have background neutralization. Basically what this is we're trying to get a neutral background on this. So we have a tool up here to create a preview, and we're going to create just a small preview in an area with no stars, no nebulosity. We just want generally a black area. So then you come back into here, select that preview, hit OK, and apply those settings. And you notice how the background just gets a nice rich black, probably a little blacker than we'd really want in this case, but we have that information there. I'm going to get rid of the previews here now, as we don't need that anymore. Now there is a color calibration where you again would leave the dark area selected, as well as the entire nebula would be selected. And it then runs through and spits out the updated color calibrated version of the image. There is a script that I found, and I'm actually going to include that below in the description, using something called Autocolor. And you run that script, and it'll run through the image and do all this work for you. All right, so we've got that done. You notice the color really doesn't look great right now. That's okay. We're going to get to that in just a moment. Again, I'm going to apply this stretch, which does some really nasty stuff to it right now. And now what we're going to do is we are going to remove the adjustments that we have in the screen transformation tool, and that'll just level everything back out, and we have a really ugly looking image. That's okay. We're going to fix this. Now we're going into the histogram transformation tool. Histogram transformation will now actually permanently adjust the image file. So this is your final adjustments. Clicking on the little circle button down here gives you a preview. So now you can see what the image looks like. Checking off the check mark down at the bottom here will give you your histogram showing up, and we're going to start stretching this image out and then apply it. I like to do this in smaller steps. Again, moving down to the bottom corner, here's a reset. Again, we're just going to move this up. Maybe we'll bring the black down just a touch on this one. Apply that. Again, level it out. And then we'll bring this back up just a touch more. And we'll bring those levels back down here. I don't want to go too far with this. I do want to keep some of the blacks in the sky, but you don't want them to be super black. The night sky isn't completely black. There is information, there is light out there. So we're going to apply it like this, and I think we're going to leave it at that for right now. So I'm going to close this down, close down our preview window here. The next thing would be the Color Cast SCNR. Now this will remove, I'm going to move this off to the side here. This will remove, you see sort of a greenish cast in the image here. This is going to remove that. So we're just going to run that. And it just kind of cleans that up. It's not that greeny color anymore. It's a bit more of a neutral, perhaps even a little bluish in color right now. Next we have the range selection. I've kind of got this mixed up here, but I'm going to go to the range selection right now. With this is going to get us the information selected in just the areas that we want. I'll show you what I mean. Again, hitting the preview button here, you can see what we have. This is much like a Photoshop mask. What's white is what's going to be affected, is what you can see of the image. What's black is not going to be touched. So you can see as we do this, we can get less or more of the image showing up. In this case, we're going to take this back to probably about there. And the smoothness just kind of is your blending. I'm going to hit OK on this. This creates a mask for us. I'm going to again shut that down. And we can close this down. We now have this mask to work with. Now to use this mask, you click on this tab and just drag it over underneath the tab of the image you want to put it onto, and you now see your mask on the image. Now up at the top there are some buttons here. Right here you can turn that off. It's also under mask. You can show mask or not show mask. You can also invert the mask, but in this case we do want to select just this area. Now I am going to do a small preview here. I'm going to look at that preview for this next setting. Right, so there we go. HDR Multiscale Transform. This will bring out some detail. It'll also help to bring down those highlights somewhat. Generally speaking, 6 tends to be a pretty good place to start. So I'm just going to drag that onto our preview here. Did some nasty stuff that got a little too heavy, a little too aggressive for my liking. So I'll bring that up a little bit more. Yeah, that's better. It's a little smoother. I'm going to try up one more from that. Yeah, actually, that's not bad. Now with the core, that's kind of impossible to get that and the rest of the nebulosity all in one shot, but you do what you can. All right, we're going to apply this. All right, so we've got that applied. We'll close this down, and we can see a before and after, and you just see a little bit more detail coming out in the nebulosity down in here. Again, the core is lost, but that's to be expected with a shot like this. All right, so we're still going to use the same range selection, and we're going to go to the local histogram equalization. This helps to bring out some of the structure. Again, this is our preview, and again, we'll turn off the preview up at the top left-hand corner here, and you notice how the detail of the nebula just really jumps out. And the reason we've selected just the nebula, it would have the same sort of effect over all the rest of the image, and we really don't want to enhance the noise and the grain that's out there. We want to minimize that as much as possible. Now, in this case, I think this might be just a little bit on the strong side. I think you might want to take this down a little bit more. I'm usually a fan of less is more. You don't want to go overboard with this. That's nice. So it just adds some structure to that nebulosity. I like that. Okay, so we're going to apply that. Like I say, less is more. You can go crazy with this, and you can create an image like nobody has ever seen. Chances are nobody would ever want to see because it's just too much. So be careful with doing this stuff. Try to keep it as natural looking as possible. It's now applied that same effect in the preview again. We don't want that though. So I'm going to shut that down. All right, and now we're going to remove this mask. So we can go up to mask and remove mask. So that mask is now gone. And I should mention as well, I'm just going to drag this back on again. You can tell the mask is applied when this tab right here is brown. Without the mask, if we take that off, right here, if we remove the mask, it turns back to a dark gray. So that's how you can tell whether the mask is applied to that image or not. Next thing we're going to do is to create a star mask, which is to select all the stars that are here. Now, again, these are numbers that I have taken from other tutorials that I've seen that seem to work most of the time. You'll play around with this and learn as you go. I'm just going to hit apply. This filter can take quite a while, so we're just going to let it run and we'll come back when this is done. Alright, so we've now got our star mask. I'm going to shut down the process here, and you'll notice when we move the star mask over top of the image, you can see how it lines up with all of the stars that we have there. We're going to take that mask, and again, we're going to apply that to this image by dragging that tab over to the active image that we want to work on. And we can show the mask. You can see just the stars are showing through the mask. Alright, so now we want to reduce the stars. In this case, maybe it's not quite as important as it is in some, but let's run with the Morphological Transformation tool here. I find this to work really well for reducing the stars, and starting in about the midpoint. Going higher in this one will reduce the stars more. I'm going to go down to about 40 or so, and let's apply that and let it run through. Alright, so I'm going back to the top here. We can undo that and redo it, and you notice how the stars just get a little smaller. We can maybe do that once more. I'm going to take that down to about 30 or so, 30. Yeah, right there, go down to 30, and we'll apply that once more. All right, so now we notice the stars from there to that. So we've lessened the stars a lot. It helps to bring a focus to the nebula itself. So we're going to close that down. And yeah, that's the basics. Now we do want to try to get a little bit more color out of here. First, I'm going to get rid of our star mask. And I'm actually going to get rid of this range mask that we created. Yes, I do want to get rid of it. And I'm going to go back to range mask again. And I'm going to create one more that's just a little broader a range mask. And again, we're going to feather that out so it's a nice soft mask. And we'll let the computer generate this range mask for us here. All right, there we go. So let's take that range mask and again drag it over to underneath this other tab and apply it. And once again, we'll turn it on. You can see we've kind of selected just the nebula, which is exactly what we want. That's really the only place that we would want to boost the color on this. So doing this, what I find to work the best on this is using the Curves Transformation tool. Turn on the preview, and over on the right hand side is the saturation tab. I click on the saturation tab, and now I can take this and I can go as crazy as I want with this, obviously. Again, the key is to be subtle, but to make it look nice and realistic. Again, going up to the top left corner, I can turn off the preview and turn it back on. You notice how it's just a nice, rich color that we get out of it. So I'm going to apply that. Again, I'm going to reset this and come back, and maybe we'll boost that just a touch more here. Something like that. I like that. Okay, so let's apply that. And we'll close that down. I am going to go back. I like working with the Histogram transformation tool. I'm going to come back in here. You got to hit the preview button again just so you can see what you're working with here. In this case, I'm going to invert. There's a button right here to do that. You can also go to mask and invert mask. Then if you go to show the mask, we're seeing this below here. You go to show the mask, it's now showing everything except the nebula. So we'll go back here, turn the preview on, and I'm going to bring the blacks down just a touch more, just to kind of darken space just a little bit more. It also tends to reduce some of that noise that we have sitting out there. You could probably even bring down our midtones just a touch here. Do something like that. And we don't want to apply that again. All right. And I think that looks pretty good for our image. So let's take a look at what we have here. And this is what we started with. Wow, there's a dramatic difference starting with this greeny looking image. And in fact, if we take this image and we remove the stretching on it, this is where we started. It really, really is amazing how much information, how much detail you can pull out of a raw file. It's absolutely insane. But I hope this helped you guys. Like I say, by no means am I an expert when it comes to Pixinsight. I most definitely am not. But I hope it helps. And if you do have any questions on some of these basic tools that we were going through, I'll try to help you as best I can. Send me a message, and yeah, be glad to help you. And clear skies, happy shooting, guys.